Next, in the horror and Orient Express, your investigators will be heading to Italy, more specifically, Milan. There, they'll have to deal with the drudges of romance, the vileness that is fascism, and the corrupt powers of the mythos and phenolic. This adventure offers opportunities for players to really sink their teeth into a plot of a love triangle, as well as look for the next piece of the Staffguard simulacrum, which is the left leg. Thus, hop on the Orient Express as we charge straight into the macabre and dark canals of Milan in horror on the Orient Express. The scenario, titled Milan in Death and Love in a Gondola, departs from being purely a mythos-focused adventure and steeps itself a little into history. It deals with both love, and more specifically a love triangle, as well as the corrupt powers of the Staffguard simulacrum affecting Milan and its inhabitants. On one side of the spectrum are the investigators, who are thrust into a love triangle between Maria Stagliani, Alberto Rossini, and Giorgio Gasparri. On the other hand, there is a string of murders that are occurring due to phenolic, as well as the powerful influence of the left leg of the Staffguard simulacrum influencing those in Milan. This influence sprouts angry mobs, and the waters and streets around Milan are filled with dread, both literally and figuratively. In terms of love triangle, it's not inherently related to the search of the simulacrum. The investigators are on their way to Milan, and they will meet Maria Stagliani. She's an attractive young woman who is heading to Milan to mourn the death of her father, Giovanni Stagliani, who taught philosophy and comparative religion at the university there. At the same time, Maria and possibly the investigators must wrestle with the love triangle that she is in. Speaking of another love triangle not related to the game, if you are still around, why don't you give this video a like and or check out and subscribe. Many of you aren't subscribed, and it does help my channel out. Plus, if you love Call of Cthulhu, horror specific and horror tabletop RPG content, then stick around. You'll probably enjoy it. So check out that like button. Go hit that bell button, whatever it looks like, alright? Anyhow, on to the characters of the module. Giorgio Gasparri is a hot-headed and idealistic lover and communist. He's a passionate fellow who, while not the most smart, will do whatever it takes to take Maria's hand against his rival and contemporary, Alberto Rossini. Maria has clear affections for the idealistic leftist. Alberto Rossini is the exact foil to Giorgio. Alberto is a rude and sleazy individual who wishes to control Maria and wed her by any means necessary. Alberto also controls the local Black Shirt henchmen. The Black Shirts historically were the paramilitary wing of the Nationalist Fascist Party. The members are distinguished by their black uniforms, and their loyalty was to Benito Mussolini at the time. The group was opposed to the peasantry and country laborer class at the time and grew harsher and more violent in the 1920s and into the 1940s. I give all of that context to inform you of how Alberto is the major antagonist of this love triangle and plot. He runs this group and is a brutal leader who will use his force and positions to strong arm whoever he chooses however he likes. When you and your heroes enter into the cold evening of Milan's St. Lucia station, you meet both of these parties. It's up to the investigators within the time span of 5 days to solve this lovers' quarrel. When the group is not doing that, they must investigate their leads on the Staffguard simulacrum. Using Beto's notes, there is a hint to the Staffguard simulacrum in Milan. Here, the investigators will go to the local library, uncover its secrets, and eventually be led to St. Mark's Basilica. In order to retrieve said important item from the basilica, the group will need to sneak into the museum without being caught by the workers, the fascists controlled by Alberto, or the mythos, which influences mobs, and mind you, dangerous mobs. There, underneath stone, they'll find a wax seal from the Gramsci family. The Gramsci family runs a doll and prosthetics company. This is where your team will be able to meet Sebastiano Gramsci. He's related to Marco Gramsci, who is the one who gave the hint on the doll factory and simulacrum. In conclusion, the interaction of Sebastiano should push the investigators to the final and most important place, the Palace Reggiano. Rezzanino? I'll be honest, I don't speak Italian, so if any of these sound wrong, please in the comment section let me know. Anyhow, the Palazzo is a 3-story building with a central courtyard and clock tower. Through the handouts and hints, players will have to navigate the clock tower in order to grab the next piece of Staffguard simulacrum. The clockwork will be dangerous, containing poorly made stairs, and dangerous made infrastructures and automatons that threaten the lives of our heroes. The group will even get a sneak peek at Fenwick, who stalks them at night. If they manage to survive without falling off the clock tower or being beaten to a bloody pulp, they are supposed to be rewarded with the left leg. Editor's note, by the way, if you haven't already noticed, I said Milan multiple times in that current portion of the video. I, for some reason, forgot that we already covered Milan, or it wasn't actually a topic of this video, and I confused Milan with Venice, which, already on top of the fact that I can't say or speak Italian is annoying, so anytime that I say Milan, just assume I mean Venice. This adventure is a balancing act of both the mythos and mundane. I think the best part to this scenario is how it intermingles the history of Milan with the mythos and gives players opportunities to get involved in a powerful side story, a lover's quarrel. However, if investigators do not care about this lover's quarrel and actively refuse to engage with it, then they're going to miss out on a large portion of the actual written material, which will be kind of annoying for the game master, but I think there's a way to run that intermingles the mythos with the lover's quarrel. Maria Stagliani is the main heroine. However, it feels like she is a plot point for the men to fight over rather than her own character. In the fiction, she's locked in her place due to Alberto and the Black Shirts for many days unless the chapter specifies otherwise. Therefore, to flesh out her character, have her be the quintessential book smart and her history buff. She could be someone who's extremely knowledgeable on Milan and Venetian history. She does, in fact, in her character sheet, have a skill focused on Venetian history at 47%. If the investigators do help her and get close to her, have her help the investigators likewise a little in their research, or point them to the library. Maybe Maria is familiar with the streets or neighborhoods that are best to go, whereas others may not. For example, on day 2, the investigators may receive a letter from Maria's maid named Bise or Bise asking for help. This letter's communication can be a way at hinting at potential hooks. The investigators could try to visit Maria's place, but it's covered in Black Shirts loitering around, ready to cause trouble. Whatever choice you make, within the 5-day time span, Maria may be under house arrest by fascists. That doesn't mean she cannot play a key role in helping the investigators. Another point on Maria. As days progress, you can also use the Venetian historian or book smarty character Maria as an indicator of how Venice, and more specifically, that area they're in, is changing due to the baleful influence. The waters get higher and darker. It smells like trash. The streets look filthy. People continue to get sick. Let Maria be the point of horror from her eyes if the investigators are not keen on the side quest. You can even make Maria be someone who's heard of the doll maker and has a doll from Sebastiano. Whatever choices you make, just make sure that Maria isn't just some sort of stagnant character inherently. Let her be actually useful to the players. Let her do something. Giorgio is the heartstrung lever. He's the character that if your PCs need some muscle, he will gladly provide that if the investigators assist him with getting married to Maria. For instance, Giorgio can be a character who rounds out a team of investigators if they don't have a character good at fighting or brawl. He can also be helpful in the St. Mark Basilica. He's not inherently built for stealth, but maybe due to his interconnectedness amongst the Labor Party, or Labor parties, he can get the investigators inside, in exchange for helping on one of the many days the PCs will be there. Finally, he may be able to join the heroes at the clock tower if they are greatly helpful to him and they maybe roll a really good charm check. Giorgio is written as not someone particularly smart, as I've mentioned before, but who will fight for those he loves. Finally, Alberto Rizzini, our lovely antagonist. He is usually not going to be directly in combat or fighting, but is a force overarching. Use him and his fascist thugs to impede our investigators. For instance, I used Rizzini's goons to stop my players briefly from getting into the dollmaker. I also used them in the fun boat scene on day 3, where Rizzino sends his goons on the investigators after the funeral of Maria's dad. Use Rizzini as an overarching force/threat, especially when investigators need to make a difficult decision. And something unrelated, but kind of related to his character, I personally say remove all the fat phobia related to Alberto Rossini. He is already an antagonist due to him being a literal freaking fascist, and also seeing Maria as an object to be lauded over, so he's also a misogynist. He's written as a shitty human because he is a sexist and fascist. There's no need to tag on fat phobia as a character flaw. You can tell that this was a little bit aged and dated, so I personally recommend removing it and being aware as a game master that this is written into the text, unfortunately. Overall, I think the less mythos portions of the scenario should build into the dollmaker areas, as well as eventually lead to the climax on the clock tower. Let's move on to the mythos portions. The actual story relevant part is a little more slow. I personally say the slowest and more weakest part is the dollmaker. The dollmaker is a way to connect the tissue of the handouts and historical scenarios. I personally say the best way I did was throw a few scares, such as creepy dolls in the basement, or creepy dolls around the dollmaker factory or dollmaker house. I'd personally recommend, if there are any details investigators have missed or any additional items you might want to give, this dollmaker area, and specifically the storeroom, might contain it, with obvious sanity damage depending on what you give them. Otherwise, the other big piece of advice is to make Fenwick's presence known at this point. Fenwick, for a lot of other scenarios within Ho-T, may not appear. In fact, I think he's underutilized, so make his stalking and killing very clear. While Fenwick does feast on someone and gruesomely destroys the victim, on some already, his presence is rarely noted. You can use him in this module by having his impact be seen while the investigators are traveling through Milan. Maybe he hypnotizes a black shirt to terrorize the investigators, or maybe he appears in one of the NPCs' minds. Maybe he quote-unquote saves, i.e. kills multiple black shirts, and then those strings of murders are put on the investigators who have been snooping around. Beyond just Fenwick appearing once on a climactic fight on the clock tower, make him a constant presence without outright revealing his entire hand. In conclusion, make Fenwick's overwhelming evil presence known amongst the darkness. He will be the character's biggest threat in the upcoming scenarios, so you should foreshadow his danger early on. I think by under-focusing on him, you're going to end up having him appear later on, and the players aren't going to really care about him as an antagonist. You have to make your players at some capacity care. So doing ways to hint at this stronger foe in the future is important. Foreshadowing is important, so do it. Overall, this adventure I think has a lot going on, more so than most of the previous scenarios. I highly recommend deciding what to do with the NPCs. Are they going to be an active part of the scenario this time or not? I think the weakest part really is the dollmaker and the automatons. While they present a cool change in pace, I think they are not as nearly as exciting as the Lover's Quarrel. I can even see you replacing the automatons with a final duel of Alberto, and maybe the Baif influence or Fenwick has pulled or turned these beings into something that is fueled by a desire to kill the investigators. The adventure, nevertheless, ends off with your heroes departing Milan, the heavy left leg of the Staffgar Simulacrum. Fenwick will be slinking into the train this night, the goal of finally taking back what is rightfully his in the coming days. In terms of what my players got up to, the biggest highlight Fenwick was the dollhouse. The players definitely did not trust Dollmaker and found it absolutely chilling. It was fun playing out that scene for laughs, and they may have destroyed a few dolls in secret. Now, with that in mind, I'm happy you got to the end, and if you want to check out more of the Orient Express campaign review, check out this playlist over here. Otherwise, check out this next video over here if that suits your liking. Be sure to as well to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last but not least, special shout out to my Patreon supporters, Harrison Parker and Logan, for your continued support. You too can support my channel over at patreon.com over here. And you can support my channel for one-time donation if you're feeling comfortable at coffee.com over there. And as always, I'm your keeper, Arcane Lore. Polarity disposition. Hope you all have an awesome day. Ciao!